Government is leaving tens of thousands of foster children at risk by again delaying their grant payments. The children could lose their grants at the end of next month because of a backlog that began in 2011. The Social Development Department wants another 18 months to solve the problem. The University of Pretoria's Centre for Child Law's Director Karabo Ozah joins me now for more. Karabo, thanks very much for your time this afternoon. So let's start with this. Do we have consensus on how many foster care grants are set to expire at the end of November?
Yes, thank you for having us. So it's a bit confusing because we did receive the application for the extension of the court order on Thursday from the department, and they seem to be estimating between 70,000 and 100,000 overall, but for the month of November they seem to say that there's about 30,000 or 33,000 that will expire if this court order is not extended by the end of November.
So why do these grant orders expire? How does that system work?
So you must remember the history of the matter, and still the current problem is the fact that a foster care order is valid for 2 years. So every 2 years it has to be renewed. And what led to this case and the pending litigation over almost 10 years now is the fact that the renewal of court orders was not done in time. So when we initially did the case in 2011, there were about almost 300,000 court orders that were going to lapse, meaning that children were not going to get their foster care grants. So over time, the department has sort of reduced what they call the backlogs, but there's still a lot of backlogs orders, in the sense that between 2011 and now, there are always still court orders that are not renewed within the 2-year period. And that means that then you don't have a valid court order, and SASSA will not pay a grant out to the foster carers without a valid court order.
So ENCA has vowed to hold government to account when it does not fulfill its mandate. And in this case, we can see that there are tens of thousands of children in foster care without access to grants meant to aid them. And the delays, as you say, go back almost a decade. Now government wants a further 18 months to try and sort out the problem. Is government at fault here, or are there more complex issues at play?
It's a bit more complex because, I mean, we litigated, and eventually in 2017 we got an order that said that, which was something that is very important that we want, which is that the Children's Act must be amended to make it clear, or make for provision where if you are an aunt or an uncle of a child or grandmother, that you don't have to have the child being placed through the court system in your care, which is what ends up leading to the backlog. Now, you have the Children's Court having to deal with all these cases. So what the court ordered, what we agreed on in 2017, was that the Department of Social Development was going to come up with the amendments to the Children's Act to make provision for a simpler way of having assistance for children who are in what we call kinship care, which is family care. There is now a children's amendment bill that has now been published, and we have until the 27th of November, all of us in South Africa, to comment on it. And also the Social Assistance Act has been amended to now try and provide for something that we always thought was more sensible than having all the children who are in the care of relatives in particular go through a long process of the Children's Court, which is what we call a kinship carers grant, which would be slightly more than the grant that we have now for child support, but also is not, which will not require that people go through the court system. So that, like, as you said, that's like the complex bit that is ongoing. The department, has sort of complied with the court order insofar as trying to come up with the legislative amendments. We're not entirely happy with what is drafted in the Children's Amendment Bill, and we have been commenting on that, and we will also be filing our submissions again to Parliament to say why what they propose is not sufficient. So that's the one component. The problem with the backlogs, which, is actually why they need the extension, it's because of the fact that there has been delays again to extend the court orders. You can imagine there was a backlog, it reduced a bit, and then not enough is done as quick as is necessary to make sure that orders that are about to lapse do not lapse. So you end up actually having orders that are on the brink of lapsing, and then you need this high court order to keep them going, because without, as I said earlier, without that, then the children and their families that are there with will not receive the foster grant. I mean, as I say, it's quite a challenging thing to come up with a systemic change, which is why we've actually tried very hard over the years to work closely with the department. But what for me is frustrating, and for our centre, is that they always wait till 2 weeks before the High Court order lapses to bring an urgent court application. We've had long discussions since the beginning of the year about the systemic problems as well as the issue of, the amendment to the Act as well as the backlogs. And we said, well, if you need to bring an application for holding the system while the law is being changed, please remember to bring this application timelessly. And now what you have is that they've now issued the application. It's set down for the 10th of November. The court doesn't have a choice. We don't have a choice. We can't oppose it, because opposing it means that children will not get their foster care grants, which is quite frustrating. And for me, it shows that there is a bit of lack of planning. I mean, right now they will say it's COVID-related issues, but it's not, because we have been engaging with them for some time now and say, well, bring an application timelessly so that we can see whether what you're proposing is something that is acceptable or not. Again, now we have to go to court. They're going to court on an urgent basis and saying that if the court doesn't give this order, all these children are going to lose out, which is the truth. And the court doesn't have a choice as well.
Well, one would think that surely 10 years or almost 10 years would be time enough to find a solution for these children who have very little other recourse. Thank you very much for speaking to us. That was the director for the University of Pretoria's Centre for Child Law, Karabo Ozah.